Hi, Scott Orlin with CINEMA-Magazine. It's not often I get to sit with royalty, but today I am with King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, but for practical purposes, Charlie Hunnam. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I'm really fascinated because as little kids we have this whole kind of imagination, especially with characters like a King Arthur, and I'm sure as a kid you did too, but now as an adult you have to interpret that. How did it change from what you thought of as a kid to be an adult?
Well, it's funny. I mean, like you say, particularly the Arthurian legend really captured my imagination as a kid. I watched Excalibur over and over again, the John Borman film, and it informed it sort of started the dream I had to be part of filmmaking, but it also informed my play because I was as a kid, 6 or 7 or 8, and so I would spend all of my time sword fighting in the garden and pretending I was a wizard and stuff. But interestingly, in terms of the journey of becoming part of a filmmaking community, becoming an actor, I remember that film was the first time that I looked beyond just being told a story and became interested in the logistics of filmmaking. And I'd asked my mum, what is the process of how do they go about choosing the actor? Is it somebody that knows how to sword fight and ride horses and do all of that kind of stuff? And my mom sort of didn't really know, but she said, I think that probably more likely it's somebody that has the aesthetic, but more importantly, the spirit that they're looking for in that main character. And then they'll teach them all of those other skills. And it blew my mind as a 6 and 7-year-old. I thought to be taught how to horse ride and sword fight is just the greatest job you could possibly have.
So was it the greatest job ever?
To answer your question specifically, cut to 30 years later, it's the part of my job that I enjoy the absolute least. So, I love having, as an actor, I feel like most of the time you feel most engaged and excited when doing dialogue scenes, when either acting with the leading lady or, having some banter with the boys. They're the scenes where you really get to sort of flex your muscles and engage. The fighting stuff, maybe it's because I've done a lot of it and the physicality comes somewhat more easily to me than it does some people, that it feels, those other scenes that are emotionally resonant or, need a level of intellectual exploration to understand what the heart of it is or the theme of it is, are just a greater challenge and much more exciting to try to get right.
Watching this movie too, I thought what was really interesting is obviously there's an action-adventure element to it, but it's really a father-son relationship. That, what is the legacy that a father passes along to his child? So I was wondering if you could talk about what do you see in your father and you?
I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think that father-son relationship dynamic informs so much of our life as men. It certainly has for me. My father was the greatest influence in my life, along with my mum. I recognize them. I just said it to you in the other conference that we did, but I always said my mum taught me to love and my dad taught me to fight, and both are equally important. But my father was a man who, in a way that taught me that it was possible. He was a man who grew up in an area that was incredibly economically depressed, and there were no opportunities. Basically, you were going to grow up, you were either going to be a coal miner, a shipbuilder, or work in a factory. That was the only opportunity. And he said, that's not what I want. I'm not going to have my life dictated to me. We only have one life, and our only responsibility to ourselves is to live it as fully as we can and do the things that we want to do. And so he was an enormous influence in that regard, and he was also just a very colorful, big character, and he was also an incredibly tough man. And that was an area that was difficult for me to reconcile in my childhood, because I went through a period of not getting on very well with my peers. I was moved from one area where I was very, very popular at 13 years old to another area where I was not popular at all. But there was a real currency in this area of violence. Like, the toughest kid in school was always the most popular kid in school. And so there was endless fights all the time. And I didn't want to fight. I was a creative. I considered myself to be an artist, but I also had the ability to fight and found myself in having to engage in that, but I was always so frightened. Like, really terrified me, the prospect of having to fight. And it was hard to reconcile that because my father was this colossus among men. I would go out with him, like in that part of the world at that time, people started drinking very young. So when I was 14, 15, 16, I'd go to bars with my father, and it's a big drinking culture up there. And so there'd be 20, 30, 40 men outside a bar waiting to get in, and 15 doormen, because it's also a very tough neighborhood, 15 doormen outside keeping everyone under control. And my father would arrive and everyone would get quiet and the doorman would part everyone and we'd walk straight in, and I'd be like, whoa, my dad is a badass. And then to be in those situations where I felt incapable of protecting myself, I almost felt like I wasn't my father's son. And so I had to go to great lengths to learn to fight and to cultivate a much more robust sense of physicality, because it made me feel inadequate, but then of course as life has gone on, that's one of the areas that I have to offer as an actor, where I am in touch with my inner barbarian and can access that pretty easily.
Well, congratulations, great job. I just can't thank you enough, but really quick, you're one of the few people, what's it like to work with David Beckham? He doesn't usually act very often.
No, Beckham is amazing. I'll tell you what, he does a great job in the film, and he's such a lovely guy. And I must say, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but it was really inspiring to be with him, because I didn't anticipate the level of seriousness and discipline that he would put into this project. He's a football star and a superstar in his own right, and he's not an actor, and I don't believe he really has any aspiration to be an actor. Why he was in this film, he's a very good friend of Guy Ritchie's, and Guy said it would be a laugh if you came in and did a little cameo. But Beckham didn't approach it that way. He'd hired an acting coach and a dialect coach, and he'd done hours and hours of preparation, and he showed up absolutely determined and very nervous, which was endearing, but very determined to do a good job. And it was like one of those moments where, you sort of understand life a little bit. I said, there's no fabricating success. Like, there's no accident that he's enjoyed as much success in his career as he has, because I just saw the work ethic behind all of that success, and it was really inspiring. Plus, he's just a lovely, humble, sweet, kind guy. So,
Like you.
Like me.
Like Charlie. I can't thank you enough. Terrific, and I hope we get to see more King Arthurs.
Thank
This
you.
is Scott Orlin. Until next time.